I will tell you this, when your manager or your VP or an executive walks by your desk at 5:30 or 6 and sees you there working, they take notice. And the reason I mention that, and the reason that's important, is because for better or for worse, as you think about career progression, it's those moments where people are going to remember that are going to be able to be used to help you kind of progress and grow in your journey. So you compare yourself to another SDR, all things being equal, you're hitting the same numbers, but you're the guy that's there grinding late. That's going to be a positive for you.
I'm OG, y'all new to the game.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you motivational tips and tactics for your sales development journey, sales journey, also for your entrepreneurial journey, as I believe that sales development is the mantra point of your career and also of your life, because it's something we use every single day. And today I have Dan Cook, SVP of Sales and Customer Success at Lucid. They're doing amazing stuff over there, growing like crazy. So you guys are going to get a lot of great insight here today. And the topic we're going to dive into is, hey, 5 things I wish I knew when I was an SDR. So Dan, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're excited about the topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks a ton for having me on the show. Big fans of you here at Lucid, and certainly have learned a lot listening to you and some of the guests. So really excited to be here. My quick intro, I grew up in New Hampshire on the East Coast, big Patriots fan and Red Sox fan. Came out to school out here in Utah, loved the mountains, loved to ski. Spent a few years in investment banking. So I actually started my career in finance, which is a little non-traditional for sales and sales development. Did a few years of in San Francisco working at a tech-focused investment bank. Moved to Boston, worked for 3 years as an associate at a venture capital firm. And believe it or not, a big part of my job there was to source investments for this particular firm. So hitting the phones, talking to CEOs, entrepreneurs, trying to find those diamonds in the rough, those great companies. And really enjoyed it, learned a ton about sourcing. Went to business school, went to Harvard Business School, enjoyed that experience, and then moved out to Utah again to join Lucid. And quick backdrop there, Lucid, our core product, Lucid Chart, is a diagramming application. We're trying to build really the best-in-class visualization platform for businesses. And when I joined, I didn't come here to do sales, but within a few months, there was something that was working, and so they asked me to build out our sales program. So I've taken it really from kind of being the first sales rep here to about 100 sales reps now, and ambitiously trying to grow more this year in 2019. So if you're looking for a job, hit me up.
Absolutely. And I got a chance to listen to you on a podcast. I believe it was a Sales Hacker podcast, and you mentioned how your first real SDR role was you were working with the VC foreman, and like you mentioned, doing that SDR work for them. So tell the audience a little bit more about that experience. And then also you said you weren't even looking to even get into sales, and then now you're the SVP of sales. So how did that all pan out for you as well?
Yeah, well, I guess I should first disclaimer, my first real sales job, so I did one of those Mormon missions and had to sell religion door to door. And believe it or not, like if you can sell religion door to door, which I did not do very effectively, by the way, you can do just about anything. So That was my first welcome to sales moment, if you want to call it that. No, so when I joined this venture capital firm, I mean, they kind of put the wool over my eyes and said, hey, we want you to come and be a VC and evaluate investments. And certainly that's a big part of the job. But when I got there, it was really 75% of what I did every day was cold calling CEOs and, trying to utilize a variety of tactics to get in touch with these folks and to learn more about their business. So not a lot of sales training. It was really just kind of try and build relationships and rapport, but learned a ton and made a ton of mistakes that, I'm happy to share some of those with you all today and hope that you all can avoid them.
Absolutely.
I loved talking to these growth stage companies, though. And as an aside, I think moving and working with these growth stage companies earlier in your career is a great thing because you just get to see so much so fast, and you really are able to develop quickly. And so when an opportunity popped up to join Lucid at the time, it was called 30, 40 people. It was a great team, and I love the product. I joined. And as I mentioned, our model is a freemium model. We give away a free version of our software.
Yep.
But within a month or two, they said, hey, we think there's a sales motion here and we'd love you to go at it. And candidly, I thought, that I would kind of figure it out and then we'd hire some seasoned sales exec to run the thing. But within a couple months, we hired a few folks. I asked who was going to manage it. They told me I was. And before I knew it, I was a sales leader and trying to build and scale something special. So it's been quite a ride and have been able to see all stages of the development of not only the sales program, but certainly our evolution and sophistication in different roles like SDR and AE and others. So it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, you are right. If you can sell religion door to door, you can, I'm pretty much, you're the confidence, you're whatever you want. So
honestly, and here's the best part, and TMI, but they sent me to Las Vegas. So I was not only doing
oh, geez.
I was not only selling religion, I was selling religion in the city of sin. So you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly.
So no one should complain about their tough SDR job. That's all I got to say about that.
I love it. I love it. And so we're going to talk about the SDR job today. Again, if you're selling toward a religion, that's insane. I feel like there's a whole other podcast in itself. But one thing that 5 things you touched on before we got on this call today is the first one is the theory of compound interest. And everyone who's in business understands, hey, you got to invest in stuff. And then obviously there's compound interest that obviously gets you more returns. So, but for an SDR role, what does that mean? And what should the audience be thinking about?
Yeah, so I started my career in finance, and so I think about this all the time. There's a few elements I'd maybe want to share. The first, clearly, the earlier you invest in your career, the earlier you put the time and effort in, the more outsized returns you'll see later, right? So that's the metaphor. I think the way that it actually manifests itself is interesting to watch. So we've hired a lot of SDRs now, and what I've noticed is there's really 2 groups. There's the group that comes and does what they're supposed to do, yep. And then there's the group that goes above and beyond and does the things that nobody asked them to do, but that get noticed. And I'm not suggesting you should go to a firm or sign up for a job where FaceTime is the name of the game. I don't believe in that. I've lived it in investment banking, and it sucks. But I will tell you this, when your manager or your VP or an executive walks by your desk at 5:30 or 6 and sees you there working, they take notice. And the reason I mention that, and the reason that's important, is because for better or for worse, as you think about career progression, it's those moments where people are going to remember that are going to be able to be used to help you kind of progress and grow in your journey. So you compare yourself to another SDR, all things being equal, you're hitting the same numbers, but you're the guy that's there grinding late. That's going to be a positive for you. So that's one element of compound interest, is investing in just pure time. And we all know in sales that that's the one thing we can control, is our time and our effort. And so that's I think an obvious one. I think the second one certainly is just like you'd want to put your money with the best investors earlier in your life to kind of achieve that compound interest. I think the same thing goes with who you choose to be your mentors and who you model yourself after. And one thing that I've learned here at Lucid in particular is that every sales floor has a culture, and every sales floor's got the folks who like to gripe and like to complain and like to say that things aren't the way they want them to be. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in that. And certainly everyone should has the right to complain about this, that, and the other. But I guess as a part of this theory of compound interest, the thing that I wish I knew, and the thing that I wish I had told some of our early SDRs, is find the role model on the team, find the individual who's got the best attitude, who's hitting numbers, and who's got the best process, and ask them to help you, and do whatever you can do to model yourself after them. And I think if you've picked the right investors, so to speak, to model yourself after, and if you're putting in that time early, it's an incredibly important, I think, thing earlier in your SDR career.
Yeah, Dan, you touched on a lot of great points there, especially people that are coming in or late, or not coming late, or staying late, right. Coming in early, or staying over the weekends. One thing I did as an SDR, I came on the weekends and I would always get extra work done, use the monitor. And sometimes the CEO would come by and like, wait, what are you doing here? It's like, work it. And he'd be like, all right, cool. So like that stuff shows up later in the process when it's up for promotion. And hey, you could have the same metrics as somebody, but if you came in that weekend, they're going to be like, that's a person that we want to get promoted with our organization. And you mentioned something, that the investor. So how can someone remove their ego to ask someone for help that's on the same team as them?
Yeah, so this is actually a great point. We have a value here at Lucid that's this concept of teamwork over ego. And this is actually really one of the other things I'd love to share with you all about the importance of that earlier in your career. So, sales, by virtue of just how it's built and how it's designed, and how your comp plan is designed, it can turn into a very selfish or ego-driven exercise. I mean, you're betting on yourself. You have to have a little ego to be willing to bet on yourself. And so I think you have to learn to combat that. And certainly you're always going to have lone wolf sales reps who are successful, kind of just putting their head down and saying, forget the rest of you. But I think that the way that you can best put yourself in a situation to learn and develop is to apply by that same value, that teamwork over ego. And, I talked about how I love the Red Sox, and I'm sure, there'll be some haters out there, but sorry, they won the World Series. But you think about baseball, it's a great comparable for, I think, the ideal sales environment. You have this one-to-one matchup between a pitcher and a batter, Certainly, you've got to do your job. You got to make the hit. You got to throw the strike. But you've got this team around you to either get on base or to catch the fly ball or the grounder or whatever. And I think that you should think about your sales career that same way. At the end of the day, it's up to you. You're the player at the bat, or you're the player on the mound. But if you will utilize the team resources around you, if you'll make sure that you're listening to and working closely with your manager and over communicating, if you'll find that investor, somebody who will take time out of their day, so it doesn't hurt if you buy them lunch. I think you can apply that teamwork over ego value, and you can get that investment as well.
Yeah, that's critical. And you're talking about investment is like, there are obviously investors. There's obviously books you can read. There's mentors obviously you can gather. There's LinkedIn. There's a ton of resources there. So I always encourage people, you gotta have that compound interest, because again, you don't know when your time's gonna happen, and if you haven't put anything into it, then nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, and to throw another thought out there too, it's like you think about the more at bats you get by virtue of the more time you're putting in and the harder you're working, the better you'll get sooner. Absolutely. And I remember working investment banking hours. It was 90 hours a week, and turns out when I look back, I actually did 4 years of work in 2 years. So you better believe I got like I learned a ton faster perhaps than somebody who was just doing the 40-hour a week thing. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can go into it, but certainly earlier in your career, I think you just got to make a decision that you're going to give up some other things and sacrifice some things to get that early return.
Yeah, and there's one thing that my mentor told me a while ago, and it still holds true to this day, is, hey, are you going to live the pain of regret or the pain of discipline? So it just really comes down to that. There's only two choices. So, hey, look, I'm just going to do the pain of discipline because I don't want to regret, hey, I had an amazing opportunity to do something and I didn't. And that kind of goes into the next part of it, which is make your closer look good. So I think a lot of SDRs, and we talked about this earlier, is people are just focused on, hey, I have to set 20 meetings this month and that's it. I don't care how I do it. I don't care who I set it up with. Like, I'm getting these 20 meetings. Talk about the importance of building your business acumen as an SDR as you transition to whether it's customer success, AE, or marketing role.
Yeah. So as an SDR, you really have two customers. There's the customer that you're trying to prospect into and you're trying to get them to take your call. And there's your account executive. This is the individual that's taking the meetings that you're scheduling and running with them to close deals. And I think oftentimes in the SDR role, you forget about that latter point and you're saying, hey, I just got to get prospects on the phone. The best advice I have is to basically say to yourself, what is my AE thinking at any given time? And how do I make sure that I do what they need me to do to make them look good? And I think there's a lot of ways you can do it. I was really impressed early in my career here when I was trying to build the team. I got invited to a stand-up over at a company called HireView here in town. Gabe Mazar was working there. Peter John, Sales, Blake Harper, they all work here at Lucid now. So you'll get the point of the story here. But I went to their stand-up, and it was so impressive to go around the room with their SDRs, and each of them would not only know their own metrics, how many calls and emails did they need to make to hit their event number. They had a kind of an event set target, but they also knew what was happening with those events. And they could walk you through the entire pipeline of their respective AE to understand what deals were going to close and so on and so forth. And if you think about these account executives got a lot going on. I mean, they've got a lot of pressure just like you, but to the degree that you can help them know and understand their numbers and know and understand the economics of what they need to accomplish to hit their goals, you become an incredibly important resource to them. And again, going back to the theory of compound interest and having these investors and folks that are willing to like stand up for you and vouch for you, that's one of the best things you can possibly do.
That is a fantastic point. And again, the more that you know about your metrics, the more that you're going to know how you're going to get results at the end of the day. Because, hey, look, if I know how to make this many dials and emails, and this is how my schedule's managed out, you're going to know what the outcome will be every single month, every single quarter, every single year, which again, a lot of people are just like, I'm just going to show up this month. I hope it works. Right. So it goes in return. A question that a rep may have here to challenge you back would be like, okay, Dan, that's great. I'm making my AE look good, but why does that matter in the long term when my leader is not going to be an AE and I'm going to be an individual contributor anyways?
Yeah. I think it's a couple things. First of all, not everybody wants to progress beyond the SDR role. So I get it. I know there's some folks out there who are kind of career development reps. And by the way, there's a great career you can make in that. But a lot of folks want to grow and progress and promote. And if you think about it, and as a sales leader, I'm constantly kind of trying to consider who should be the next reps that we promote from a development role into a closer role. And as you might imagine, one of the, we're going to check the numbers. We're going to make sure they're putting in the dials. We're going to make sure they've got the horsepower.
Right.
But very quickly, then you turn to, do they actually know, like how's their onboarding? How quickly are they going to ramp? How are they going to do as an account executive? Do they have the disposition and the propensity to do it? And the SDRs who've been basically making their AEs look good and who are paired with the AEs who are being successful and who are showing that they understand the business and the business model, they're always going to be the ones who you're going to default to or you're going to pick, all things being equal.
Absolutely. And then how do you determine that? Is it only determined on metrics? Because obviously it's not. What are some other factors?
Yeah. So here at Lucid, we have a kind of a dual element. So really it's 3 parts. The first, you've got to hit your numbers. So at the end of the day, I'm telling you all this nice stuff, get to know your AE, blah, blah, but you got to hit your numbers. You got to do your job. So that's certainly the first thing. The second thing is we do have a qualitative element. So, our SDRs will interview with their prospective AE manager, but guess what? Just like an AE manager is going to be looking outside and doing reference checks on somebody that they might hire externally, they're going to do reference checks on you. And guess who they're going to ask? They're going to ask the AE you are supporting. Right. They're going to ask somebody else in the room. So I think, you've got to impress them. So that's the second thing. And the third thing we have is a product certification, and you got to check the box there. That's just something you got to do. But so those are the tactical things we do in order to promote. But again, kind of corresponding with why you want to make your AE look good.
Yeah, and that's critical. And it goes into business acumen again. It goes into, hey, making sure that you understand what the role you're getting into, which just goes into like the next part is like think like an AE. How does an SDR think like an AE? Obviously, they're not closing deals. They're not getting that satisfaction. They're obviously setting opportunities, and then they're like, go set them again. So how should they be like an AE?
Yeah, so I guess I have an anecdote here that actually is not really a sales one. I worked at this investment banking job. I'm in a cubicle all day long, every day. And, I felt like I was crushing it. I was doing everything they asked me to do. You're working till 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes, and you come back in at 8 and you're just back to the grind. I mean, looking back, it was actually kind of hellish. Sounds like but I remember going to my year in review, and I went in there so confident because I'd done everything they asked me to do. And I remember they started just asking me questions. Well, tell me about that particular deal you worked on and what was going on there. And really and I didn't have answers. I was really good at my tactical elements. I could tell them exactly what I had done right in certain ways, but I didn't have the big picture. I didn't understand exactly what was going on. And basically the feedback was, hey, look, if you want to grow and progress in your career, you've got to think a level above. You've got to be thinking like an owner. You got to be thinking like your manager. You got to be thinking like your account executive. And so I think holistically, you always have to take the time. And it goes back to that first point, to find some time in your day to step back and say, what is this all about? And how is the business doing? How is the business that I'm running performing for this account executive? And if you can start to think that way, first of all, your management chops will develop. You'll become more quantitative. You'll start to think a little bit better that way. You'll be more in sync with your manager and their manager, and you'll make them look good. So it all kind of jives together.
So does that go back to learn that, right? Because the rep may come in and be like, okay, how do I do that? Is it talking to your manager more, having more one-on-ones with them? Is it going back to that person who is that top rep? Or is it even tag along on AE's calls to figure like, how are they talking and what questions should I be asking more?
Yeah, so those are all really good ones. And you know this better than even I do. I mean, I would take everything you just said and I'd write that down. Here's the one thing I'll add though. I found that sometimes reps will come to me and they'll say, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting the development I need. And I'll say, well, are you going to your team meetings? Yeah, I'm going to my team meetings. Are you having your one-on-one with your manager? I'm going to I'm doing that. Are you syncing with your account executive? Yes. So what I tell them, and as I say, well, who on the sales floor do you look at and admire and think is doing a good job? And they'll name a few names. And I say, have you invited them to lunch and have you offered to pay? And what I found is that it's that informal mentorship and it's proactive informal mentorship is almost where you'll get more bang for your buck than the dedicated one-on-one time or the training and so on and so forth. I mean, go there, do your job, listen, pay attention. Hopefully the manager prepped and did a good job and gives you something important. Hopefully when you go to your one-on-one, your manager's caffeinated, so they actually want to pay attention to you.
Right.
But honestly, it's when you find somebody good, and again, I know these all kind of sync together. You find your investor, you take them out to lunch and you offer to buy. You find the person who's willing to do that and you ask them every dumb question you can. And then you say, can I role play with you? That's where you'll start to see the progress. And I think you just don't rely on the infrastructure of the company to give you all the training you need, especially in growth environments. Things are changing so much. Everyone's trying to do a good job, but you've got to take ownership of that.
And this question is 2 parts. So it's how important is a mentor as a whole? Because you mentioned investors, talking to people. And then how have mentors been helpful for you personally in your sales career?
Yeah, so I'm actually glad you asked. I was just thinking about this before you did ask the question. I remember when I was at Harvard Business School, one of these classes you go to, and look, I had a great experience there. I'm not sure if I learned anything, but I love going. And,
my brother went there.
Yeah. And so, I'm in these classes, and I remember going to one, and it was kind of this personal development class, and this professor proposed the idea that you should have your own personal board of directors. And I thought, like, that's pretty profound. I mean, every company you go and work for has got this board of directors. They care about the business. They're thinking about how they can improve it. And if you think about that, why wouldn't you go out and try and find a few folks that you respect? By the way, diversify it. Don't make it all salespeople, right, who have a vested interest in you and who you check in with once a quarter, and you tell them how you're doing. And it's not just about work, it's maybe about other things that are personal or your own career development. And so I took the advice. I have a personal board of advisors. There are a few folks along the way. Kyle York ran sales at a company called Dine in New Hampshire. Dave Groh, I work with here. He's my boss, but I consider him a mentor. There's a few folks that I've just really come to admire. And every quarter, I make sure I have a call on the calendar. I check in with them. I tell them how I'm doing. I ask for some advice. So I think you can do the same thing. And it's finding people that want to help. And guess what? Most people in this world love the feeling of providing mentorship and giving guidance and paying it forward. And so find someone good and ask them to be on your board.
That is a great piece of advice. I had the same thing. Someone told me that, and I was like, that just makes a ton of sense. Like, you need to have someone to hold you accountable or get feedback from, right? Because we have ideas of like, hey, I know what to do, but like, can you be a sounding board? And that's super important. And you mentioned this earlier, but I want to see if there's anything additional you add to this: teamwork over ego. Is there anything more that you touched on it, but like, hey, look, what really goes into that? How did you guys even come up with that saying?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll maybe add to that teamwork over ego concept, and I really believe in this, is there's this disincentive for all of us to watch people that are maybe better than us at our job either get promoted ahead of us or be brought in externally. Everybody kind of wants to be at the top of the food chain, so to speak. And I think sometimes we get defensive if we feel like someone's going to maybe come in and swoop in and take the job that we were hoping to get.
Yep.
And I think that, look, you have every right to feel sad and to be disappointed if that happens. But I think teamwork over ego, if you apply that, really means you should basically say to yourself, what can I learn from this person? And how do I make sure that I don't let jealousy or these other things get in my way of being a top performer and of making sure I'm learning? And again, sales, there's this perverse incentive. It's always going to be up against us that we need to hit our numbers. We need to do what's right for number one. But as folks get brought in that are better than you, or that maybe get topped on top of you, or that prevent you from growing and progressing, ask yourself what you can learn. Try and apply teamwork over ego. And what I found is that if you do this earlier in your career, later in your career, when you're asked to run a team or manage a team and you bring in someone who's better than you, a rising tide lifts all boats. And it can actually really help elevate you in your career. And just as a side, this happened for me here. I was able to convince Peter Chun and Blake Harbour and Gabe Mazar and others, these fantastic sales thought leaders and sales leaders, to come in here. They're better than me in my job. But because I recruited them in here, it didn't work for me. So I'm just saying it's benefited me, and I think it can benefit you. Maybe not in the near term, you'll feel the pain, but it's that long term that you'll benefit.
Absolutely. In the long term is the most important. And that goes into like the last piece of like, hey, the 5 things, healthy habits. What are some healthy habits that you suggest SDRs have?
Yeah, I mean, this one I think is tough because you want to invest in your career. Dan just said, be at the office and work all day. But one thing I've learned, and one thing I wish I knew, is that you've got to take care of yourself, right? And I think there was a mentor of mine that kind of explained it like a square, and I've used this metaphor with my team, but there's 4 sides to the square. There's your mental health, there's your physical health, there's your social kind of health, so to speak, and then your spiritual health. And you got to take a step back early in your career and say, is my square a square, or is one side too short because I'm not investing enough? And I think particularly you'll find that if you don't set patterns early for physical exercise and taking care of yourself, you won't run as well. You won't be as good at your job, and it'll affect you certainly when you get older like me.
Yeah, those are all great points. You know, it's the reason why, hey, like I'm trying to work out the times I need to during the week, like make sure that obviously you're reading, mentally get yourself there, take some time to meditate, spiritual, whatever you do. Those are all critical because we can't be running 1,000 miles per hour as much as we'd like to. The goals that we have to hit, obviously we're trying to do that, but it's just not possible. So it's definitely going to slow us down in the long term.
That's right.
And I would say, as we wrap this up, last question I ask everybody, and it's pertained right to the topic again. What is the number one piece of advice that you have for SDRs as they enter into their new role?
Yeah. So again, find somebody who's the best on the team, watch what they do, ask them if you can shadow them, take them out to lunch, offer to pay, and say, hey, teach me everything you know. And they'll then have a vested interest in you. You'll have a mentor to help you learn, and then just go out and crush it.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, thank you so much for providing a lot of insights and valuable knowledge for today. Is there anything else that you want to shout out, comment on before we leave?
I guess the one thing, just a shameless plug, we just launched a sales solution here at Lucid Chart, basically built for account mapping. You can think anytime you're working with your AE, there's a lot of contacts you want to hit up. Drag a shape out, create a contact on that person, syncs with your CRM, makes your life better, makes your AE look good.
There you go. Well, Dan, thank you so much again. As I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Morgan.